to do that.
Oh,
Awesome. So welcome again. All
thank
right.
you.
Don, all the way in from Tucson.
Hi, my name's Don. I'm just a casual website person. I have a personal website, and I'm helping out with a website for our American Legion. And I like to play with the stuff. I don't have a business or anything like that, but I like to learn. Steve and I have a kind of a connection. Cal State, San Bernardino.
Yeah.
Anyway, I come for the free food and all the friendship, and
Hey.
Sumner and Joe, I really appreciated your presentation the other day. I was waiting for it to come up, and I saw all my friends in there, and Alicia and everybody else that was in there. So thank you for doing that.
Hey, we're all family, you know.
I back a year ago probably. They used to have a couple WordPress meetings in our town in person, but they moved it to a part of town I didn't feel comfortable in at night. But I found this, of course, during the pandemic, and then one of the first people I met was Alicia. She's a ball of fire, and she's makes you want to come back. So I attend the events just to learn, and just learning is a lifetime process, and plus I get to see all my friends. So
awesome. Well, welcome back. Did you make it to US? I think you were there, but I don't think
well, no, what happened was I was all signed up to go, and at my volunteer work at the VA, I got exposed to COVID.
Oh no.
And so to err on the side of caution, I canceled, and I let them know that I wasn't going to be able to come, so they could let my ticket go to somebody else.
Awesome.
I was looking forward to coming, and I had my hotel reservation and everything. So
I'm glad you're better, and thanks for joining us today.
okay.
Next up, Larry.
All right, San Bernardino. I have fond memories of the old San Bernardino Swing Auditorium. That was a fun place to see a concert. Great place too. It burned down, didn't it? Didn't that place burn down? Yeah, that was sad. That was a sad day. Anyway, I'm Larry. I live in North Hollywood, California. I'm a white guy with, okay, it's gray, not sun-bleached hair. I have blue eyes. I wear glasses. I got a big schnoz. I'm wearing a red hoodie and a Dead and Company t-shirt. Grateful Dead. Woo! And let's see. I love these workshops. Lynn and I got turned on to the whole, accessibility on WordPress thing at the beginning of COVID, and we started coming to these Zoom meetings and, just got hooked instantly, I dabble in the web a bit, and eventually I will build a really nice music website for myself, and maybe even one that's good enough that I could offer other people the possibility of me building one for them too. And it's good to be here and good to see everybody again. And that's about it.
Right. Welcome back. And just as a note, after we finish, I think the next meetup is going to talk about Black Friday deals and discounts. But then we're going to start with 6.1 and learning that way. So I'm going to lean heavily on the learn WordPress stuff, but it's going to force me to finally get into these blocks and do it too. So we can build something together. If you're
all right, we can all play with blocks together. Woo!
All right. All right. Next up is Lynn. Welcome, Lynn.
Hi there. I'm Lynn Nishihara. I'm an Asian American female, middle-aged, with black hair, and I'm wearing a gray hoodie right now with a blue shirt. I am a volunteer website administrator for AIRS LA. That's the Audio Internet Reading Services Group. And I'm really glad that Anna is here, and you too, Steve, and everybody else, because I had a question for the Green Geeks people, but I didn't know who to ask, because you guys are hosting my website that doesn't have anything right now. And the question I had was something that people had mentioned a while back on, there's an app or a plugin so that when you're doing your social media posts, you could do it once and then it populates everything else. And I wrote it down, but I can't remember, or I can't find my notes.
I'll put it in. It's Jetpack. Yeah,
Ah,
Jetpack. So I'll put the link to it in the chat.
oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, part of Jetpack has Publicize, which is a tool that repurposes your content and sends it out to social media. You just create the links to, you sign into your accounts and then it does the rest once you hit publish.
Okay, yeah, because it's taken a long time to try and get people to come to our site and posting it, individually. It takes a long time. So
And that's
thank
what you mean, right? That's what you mean. You mean going from the site to the social media, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He's right. That's the easiest one.
Yeah. Do you know another one, Steve? You want to add or?
No, there's another one but it's a couple bucks and you got to figure it. I mean, no, Jetpack, the free version of Jetpack, if you don't mind, some people criticize the bloat that Jetpack gives, but I mean, I'm all about making it easy. So I have a little bit of disagreement with some of the other guys that come to my website, come to my meetup, because they'll argue about things like, they don't want to use a page builder. Well, okay, dude, then you keep screwing around doing your extra CSS and I'll keep messing around with Elementor and we'll see who gets the website done faster. So, I have arguments, but it's okay. We still get along. I disagree with going the extra route, right? Like make it the easiest.
Yep.
Jetpack's the easiest.
Yeah,
and free is good.
Yeah. And Lynn, go ahead, finish. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, that was it.
right.
I'm
So
just
welcome.
happy to be here with you guys.
All right. And like I said, during the meetup, I'll shoot you the link so you can just jump directly there. Or if you're in your admin, you can go to plugins and find it that way also. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Next up. Oh, let's go back to Steve. He's next in the list.
I'm Steve. I'm from San Bernardino. I said all my stuff earlier, but I put a meetup link in there. It's the second thing in chat, and it's for this Thursday. It's the second Thursday of every month. And if you have WordPress problem, I swear we'll work until we get it done.
Yeah, and that's what's awesome for folks that are in attendance. There's a million different flavors of meetups, and Steve does the help desk style, which is very, very beneficial. How did you like US? I know, was that your
It was
first
great.
time at
I
US,
actually, I spent a bunch of time in the what do you call it, the convention hall or whatever, the exhibitors hall, because for me, I don't know about sitting in a lecture the whole time. And oh yeah, sure, I'll send it to you, Sally. Maybe you came after I posted it. No sweat, I'll put it in there. But anyway, I was able to get in there and meet some people of some vendors that I wanted to speak to and learn more about their products. And complain to one of the hosts because
I was gonna say, isn't that the best thing? Is that all of the people that work
Yeah.
in companies, they have a representative there, so you could talk directly to them.
Right. So I was able to speak to the people, find out why they charge $300 when somebody else charges $3, and find out why this guy says a deal for $8 and then switches it to 30, and why do they even put that out there? And then how did you lose my MySQL table 3 times in 12 months? So I argued that stuff with these people, and of course, none of it ever. Losing my data 3 times in a year didn't give me any discounts, but I told them that's why I'm no longer the customer, and
Oh wow.
and I wanted to be their customer. So for me, that was great. As far as going to lectures, I did 12 years of college. I'm not really much into going to. I mean, I sat through a doctoral degree, so I'm really not trying to sit there and listen to someone tell me things because I don't think I can learn, but just because if I'm not sitting there and banging it out, it's hard for me to like pay attention and like follow along. And I learn more doing. I've always have. So, if I'm not sitting at my computer and actually like following along, it doesn't really help for me anymore. And some, I sat in some of the lectures, thought they were interesting. Then I missed out on a couple good ones, I guess, because I was too busy arguing, I guess, or talking to somebody in the convention hall.
But for the sake of everyone, do you want to share that plugin maker so people can avoid it, or?
Oh, well, the one that I have, I'll go grab the plugin that I was using and bring it in, but it costs money. I forget what it's called. It's called like Social Share or something. And the issue being is that you have to go through. And there's 2 problems, right? The Jetpack one requires you to have a Jetpack account. So you have to have like a WordPress.com account. And that's the one issue. So Jetpack just won't, like, you just can't download Jetpack and all of a sudden it works. You have to set up an account with them. And then you'll see in your Jetpack thing, it gets a little confusing because in the Jetpack, you'll have a dashboard and it'll monitor your website, and it's kind of weird, but it still works. It's cheap. It's not zero, costs nothing to get to the feature that Lynn wants. The other one is not that. It just plugs in and you type in your
Well, it's a premium.
Facebook account, in your Twitter account, and your LinkedIn account, whatever it is. And of course, it I think it even has Instagram. And of course, it's like $40. So, you know, and I think it's $40 a year or something, and then it breaks. So I mean, just use Jetpack. That's what I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going the other way, because I never heard of a way to go from Facebook to your website. And if I thought that's what she was saying at first, and that's not what she's saying.
Oh, it's the other direction. Yeah.
The other way. So
All right.
that's
Cool.
it.
All right. And Sumner, anything you want to add?
I think everybody knows me. I think I took up sufficient time.
All right. Yeah. You know, we sort of go out of order here. And so we sort of start talking before everyone's here. So, but welcome everyone. My name's Joe
Yes,
Simpson.
Sally.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Oh,
okay,
she did.
Sally,
And she added my link too. Thanks, Sally. You put my Thursday link.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sally. I didn't mean to do that to you.
Gosh,
Oh my
no
God, can you
worries.
forgive me?
No, sorry, I was a little bit late. Happy Saturday, everybody. I'm Sally. I am an older woman with sunburnt sunshine hair, or strands of wisdom that I have heard. I wear glasses. I'm wearing a gray and white warm sweater because we had snow this week. I live 3 hours north of Tehachapi in the mountains, and I have been in accessibility and WordPress in it, not just working with developers creating sites, for the last 2 years. And it's been the most amazing journey because of everyone here. Thank you. And Joe, did you, because I came in late, did you post the link to the video, that great video about Sumner you created?
I'll share it again. It's
Okay.
as part of the slide deck.
Oh, okay. So anyways, yeah, so I'm just August 8th, 2020 was when I started my accessibility journey, and it's just been amazing. And I attended WordCamp, and I was a first-time speaker, and that never would have happened if Joe and Sumner didn't believe in me and had me pinch hit the last minute for WordCamp Santa Clarita Valley when a speaker backed out. And I'm just here to tell everyone about everything that I learned here. So thanks. So I just have one question on the social media. So I do digital marketing as well. And I've heard that when you post from third-party platforms, that the native platforms like Facebook and Instagram and all that don't give your posts as much reach. And we already know organic reach is down to 1 to 2% of your followers, because they want you to buy ads. So I'm just curious if anyone has thoughts on that, because I've always avoided third-party platforms for those reasons in posting social media.
You know, I've never thought about that, but I only have one client, it's total lead generation. And that's their whole reason that we have the whole web, everything is all about getting a lead to their school, because it's a bartending school, and in California, that's not regulated. So it's, you know, it's brutal to get people to come. And they have a 100-hour program versus a 40-hour program, everybody else. So it's really kind of challenging. And all we do is we have the website, and it's informational, and we've packed it full of pages and all that, and it's all legit. But on the Facebook and Instagram, that's where we do like what would normally be like a blog post, you know, like a real quick this, that, and the other thing real fast, and we keep it organic there, and we boost the crap out of that. We advertise on Facebook. We don't do much Google ad. We found that the marketing on Facebook is much better, push versus pull, and we do way better on social media, and it's way cheaper, because I guess other bartending schools haven't figured it out yet. And you know, he'd probably have he'd probably be very nervous that I'm telling this to 9 people or 8 people.
What's
Because
said here stays here. It's like going to Vegas.
Right.
Unless it's accessibility to teach the world or WordPress.
Right. So I'm not really worried about it, but telling you guys, but that I agree with you. I don't, we did it with a senior moving company, but then the plugin I was using broke, and we haven't noticed any difference. In fact, I get, if I put together a graphic and some text for Facebook, we get more likes than if I do off of like a real post on their website. So I don't know if it's because I mean, I don't work for Facebook and I've never looked into this, so I don't know.
But you're spending money boosting and promoting as well. You're just not posting
for
organic.
the bartending school.
Yeah.
For the moving company, no. He didn't want to do any social media. He didn't want to add anything. He just wanted to see what we could do organically. And I get more likes on the organic post that I just create separate from the website that I create for Facebook. I get more likes there than I do if I cross post immediately.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Sally, I really think it comes back to know your audience and know where your audience is.
Mm-hmm.
That could be too.
If your audience is like, I have a client who her audience is a lot of people that spend time on TikTok and Instagram. Well, she will not, by my advice, she will not spend time on TikTok. So she pushes everything to Instagram. And very little goes to Facebook. But all the good content is on our website. And every time Google makes an algorithm change, all my clients are notified if they want to make any changes to the content. And since Google is now focusing on FAQs more than anything, if clients didn't have their website set up in that structure, now is the perfect time for them to do that. The other thing, I have a client that she doesn't even have a Facebook account. She doesn't even have an Instagram account or Twitter or any of that. She is only on LinkedIn. That is her audience. And her website is written for that audience as well. So I don't think there's a one size catch-all for this, because there's too many moving parts, and there is no, like everything else we talk about, there's no quick fix. You've got to know your audience, and you develop your content for that audience, and then you promote to get to that audience, and for that, and you promote in a way that that audience would respond to it.
That's
the way I
the best advice I've
respond.
ever heard. Actually, that's probably the best, seriously, the best advice I've ever heard on that, because that absolutely sums up my experience in the past 10 years.
It's, I mean, so much of what we do, you got to find your niche, right? So no matter, like your company has to find their niche too. They may not be a Facebook company.
I found it
That's it too, is
Publicize also that you couldn't customize for each social media platform. It was just kind of like the same message in Publicize that you would put out, and in Instagram you would use hashtags, and you write differently for each social media platform. So I think what Sumner is saying is really on topic.
Yeah, and I know at our company, for example, our editors don't use Publicize because they want to customize a message for each platform. So it just depends. Like if you're trying to determine what your platform's going to be, it may help to start off with Publicize and then drill down and do something specific later.
Well, thanks.
All right. And welcome, Sally. Sorry, I forgot you.
Oh, no worries.
My name's Joe Simpson. I'm an African-American male with salt and pepper beard, glasses, and I always wear a baseball cap because I have a really large head and it's bald. So it would burn your eyeballs up if you saw it too often. All right, so let me get to the slide deck. Today is a follow-up on last week's meetup. Last week, we were talking about WordPress Accessibility Day, and we had so many great stories. We did a preview of the video that, oops. Oh, sorry, Sumner, forgot that. All right, that we sort of went over. And the second part of the meetup was going to do a brief introduction into color in the WordPress space and just color in terms of accessibility. So we're going to follow up and do that today. All right. All right, so can you see my screen? All right. Again, welcome to our meetup here in Santa Clarita. We do this Saturday traditionally way back in 2017, January 2018, when I started this meetup. We used to do it at the local library. Like we've been at a couple of the local libraries, and we always did it on Saturday because, you know, I would take my kids and they would do their homework, and, you know, you would always get stragglers that were taking their kids in to learn. So we always had a good and receptive audience. So we kept the Saturday thing. Again, it's for me, most people work hard during the week. And for me, this is just fine for me. I would have difficulty getting from downtown back. And so I was like, I'd rather wait to the weekend to do it. And we've just done it that way ever since. If you want to follow us, we're on social media, and I'm killing myself. I'm a former Toastmaster, so every time I do, I'm dying inside. Each of these, we're on these social media platforms. If you look for WordPress SCV, we mention our meetings, we put up recaps, we share a lot of information there. And the last link, for instance, will get you to the videos that we post, including the one that we did for WordPress Accessibility Day. All right, we went through our introductions and our welcome. Our meetup is a WordPress meetup, and so we generally, we want to make sure that everyone is aware of the 5 good faith rules. Basically, that means don't act like a jerk, don't treat others like jerks, and we're here to learn and share with each other. So that's there. You can always find us in the dashboard. Way back during an update of WordPress, they added events, meetups, WordCamps to the dashboard. So if you select your location at the top of this box and enter your city, it'll tell you what's nearby. You can also use it. It's a great travel companion. When I go to a different city and I don't want to sit through an in-laws dinner, I'll look up a WordPress meetup and drop in. You'll also see news from WordPress.org, from a couple of major publications that cover WordPress, like WP Tavern and Post Status. There's a really good article on Post Status in the dashboard now about some bad apples in the community. I know during the WordCamp US lead up, I brought to the attention of the foundation that someone was being harassed online, and it sort of talks about how as a community you can sort of get through times like that. You can get our slides. Let me post a link to our slides in the chat here. And it has a few links on some of the slides that I feel are valuable. And let me know if you have any issue getting to that. As mentioned at the top, we're sponsored by Green Geeks. They've been with us since our first WordCamp. And they've been great friends and supporters of what we're doing here in our community. So I always appreciate them, and I give them a shout out. You can find out more information about their hosting services. Again, the next meetup, we're going to do Black Friday deals, and we'll talk about the best time, especially if you're looking to try out a new service or try to plug in. You can get really good deals at this time of year. So we always sort of profile that. They also have a great Twitter channel, a Twitter follow. All of their information in terms of their webinars and things like that are there, as well as tips and tricks on how to use their service. This in 10 days, one of our WordPress Santa Clarita Valley members is going to do a webinar. Lee spoke at WordCamp US, which was awesome too. So we had a couple of folks from our community represent our community to the global WordPress community. And she's going to have a webinar on 10 best web design practices to create engagement. Yeah, Lee is a pretty awesome person. She is part of our Elementor meetup, and she's awesome. All right, in terms of news and notes, WordPress 6.1 Misha is released. It was released last week. It's got quite a few new features, as well as 2023. The new WordPress core theme was released as well. I'm a jazz fan, if you can't tell by the music in the background, of the albums in the background. I have a Spotify list that contains for those that don't know, each major core release is named after a jazz artist. And so I've gone in and added a few from this, the title, Misha, he's I think he's Ukrainian, then I think he moved to Russia. He's a jazz pianist, and I added him to the playlist. So there's hours and hours of music in there that you're welcome to, if you have Spotify, to grab it and listen to. Also, in the slide deck, I have a link to the WordPress Accessibility Day playlist. There's a page on WordPress Accessibility Day that has all the sessions. And since we were in the transition between the, I think the first session and the second, we have our own little playlist. So you could jump right to our video instead of trying to search through the video. So I think it's the third one down on the left, as well as there's a lot of international WordCamps coming up. There are 2 today, this weekend that are going on right now in Nepal and Sevilla. I think, yeah, and in Costa Rica, I think a couple of folks from our community, William Jackson and Aida Jackson, are down there. And then there's a couple concluding with WordCamp Italy next weekend. As mentioned, on the WordPress Accessibility Day replay page, I sort of moved ours up to the top, but session 6 is the one that we did in honor of a really incredible contributor in our community, Sumner. So I would encourage you to check that out. I also have a link that I'll share in the channel on our WordPress Santa Clarita Valley Meetup page. I put our intro video where I captioned it and everything. So the intro is there as well if you wanted to take a look at it. All right, so today's topic is an intro to accessible color. We often, there's a term, we often eat with our eyes. You know, what we see on a plate, if it's engaging visually, we'll want to eat it more. They say there's an emotional connection that musicians have with us. Music moves us. There's a desire for musicians to connect with their audience. We often color our hair, but what if there was no color in the world? The title slide was intentionally made bad. The text couldn't be read over the top of the image for a specific reason. Like if we saw the world without color, we would approach it much differently. Like this woman, we wouldn't know that this is the way she really looks. Color is a very important component to what we do in the web space. So hence the title, Intro to Accessible Color. I always, you know, when I started doing some WordPress presentations, and during WordPress Accessibility Day, I mentioned the first time I saw Sumner speak, the woman that was next to me was so infuriated by the potential of more work that she would have to try to beg her client for, that she turned and punched me in the shoulder because she said, "Oh, accessibility makes me so mad." But what you'll find, and what I'm hoping to get across today, is just having this knowledge can impact what you do for your clients. And that's like the first step, because there are so many instances when the message didn't get across, or the person didn't know, or the person didn't give across. This is an example of that. A few years back, and I think now it's sort of lesser of a deal, but they still come out with NFL Color Rush uniforms. And way back, the very first one was between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. And right now you say, wow, that's pretty cool. They're all red and one's all green. But to someone with color blindness, this is what they saw. A bunch of gray blobs on a gray field with gray background. So someone in the New York NFL offices pitched this wonderful idea about, hey, we could sell extra jerseys. It's going to increase profits. And they got hammered so tough about this that it caused them to make some changes to it, but it really hasn't fully trickled in. So what I'm trying to get across to you is that you have the power to avoid this with the website work that you do for your clients. So I have a confession. There are a whole bunch of books on this shelf, and this bookshelf was from my college days at Eastern Michigan University, where I was a graphic design major. My first internship was at as a graphic design intern. And I went on and I began to work with it as a career. And in college, we learned about how powerful color was in terms of the psychology of color and how it impacts people. Red impacts you in a certain way. It agitates you. Hospitals and things of that nature would paint their walls a certain color because they wanted to calm people. Color also has a cultural impact. Certain colors mean things in certain cultures. For instance, we all know Tiger Woods in honor of his mom and in honor of her idea that red is a power color. He will wear red on Sunday. So color has a definite impact in a lot of what people do. My current design director at Metro, we have an award-winning brand. And when he pitches an idea, it's part of how we pitch our ideas to our client. We pitch them through color and design. Design makes you feel a certain way. I talked a little bit about how musicians play and you connect with the music on an emotional level. Designers feel the same way. And I feel like my confession is that I used to design that way as well. As I mentioned, I've worked at a number of big brands. I was in corporate identity, and as a young graphic designer, I did an internship at Unisys. At that time, they were merging Burroughs and Sperry into one company, becoming the largest computer company in the world. I worked at Henry Ford Hospital, which is the largest hospital brand in Michigan. When I got out of college, I went to work at Chrysler Corporation in their identity, in the Penta Group, which is their corporate identity group. And now I work at Metro. So I've always worked in a brand setting where design has been sort of upfront and foremost in terms of what we wanted to communicate with our audience. So in terms of color, I had to shift gears. Once I learned about accessibility, when I started back at Metro, I became a little more cognizant of it, but it's only been heightened in the last 5 years. So today, I want to talk a little bit about accessible color. Again, it's one component to accessibility as a general practice and what you do with your website, but it's I feel like it's one of the easiest ways you can make a quick impact on your site and continue to build something that more people can use. We'll talk a little bit about color contrast. I always point people to accessibility ready themes as a starting point for building your websites. We'll take a look there. As I mentioned, 2023 was just released this week, and it has a number of accessibility improvements. We'll take a look at how inside of a theme, WordPress has a few hints that help you with color. And then we'll sort of wrap up with some free tools, and we'll test color contrast in a demo setting. And also, the last thing I wanted to share, the image that I started with, the magenta flowers or the pink flowers, is sort of my cautionary tale for this presentation. When I was a graphic designer at Metro, we had a marketing rep who loved magenta and everything. She wanted everything to be Pantone 214C. So I always have the cautionary tale of Pantone magenta, because no matter what we were designing, she wanted to put magenta in it. And even to this day, if you go to her social media page, and she's been gone from Metro for maybe 20 years, it still has a lot of magenta. So sometimes we all have these blind spots that we design to or we build to. But what I'm hoping is that when I tell you a little bit about color contrast and how to sort of and show you these tools, that you always think first as you're building things, does this work? Does this type work? You know, you'll do certain things to make sure that your color is accessible. All right, before we go further, any questions before we jump in? All right. So these are sort of the definitions from the WEBAIM color page. Contrast and color are vital to accessibility. Users, including users with visual disabilities, must be able to perceive the content on your page. There are so many instances, and unfortunately, I didn't have time to sort of throw slides in here. There's so many things that are design trends that are terrible for color contrast and how people see these things. How many people don't underline their links on their web pages? And I've seen, you know, the curse of gray hyperlinks drove me crazy. You know, a lot of times there are simple ways that you can, you know, how would someone know that it's a link if they can't distinguish that it's a different color, or if they're reading it and there's no link. A lot of times designers do that. In the WCAG 2, contrast is a measure of the difference between perceived luminance or brightness between two colors. So again, a hyperlink next to a standard word that's a similar color can't really be distinguished, so why do it? All right, here's some more information. The 2.0 AA requirement is that you should have at least a 4.5.1 for normal text and 3.1 for larger text. And then it goes on for the different levels. And in terms of text size, large text is considered 14 point. So just imagine, most of us don't use 14. I know I try to start at 16 and go up. So making sure that you know what size type you use in terms of color. On my other, I'll see if I can find it. There was a great example that I was going to show there's this designer that I sort of follow on the internet, and he has this downloadable book that he shared on the internet, and the large type is accessible, but he has tiny type and it's in a very lightweight, so that fails. So again, knowing what your type size is and how what color it's being used in can affect whether it's meets contrast standards or not. All right, so here are some links at the very end for some resources for you. So let's go out and take a look at some examples. All right. All right, so all right, so first thing we're going to do, let's look inside of WordPress. So this is, I spun up a local site for this demo. So once you're inside of the dashboard, the standard WordPress installation has the last 3 versions of the themes. I deleted 2021 for the purposes of this demo. But say, for instance, you wanted to find a theme. I always recommend looking for this first. If you notice here, there are 5,224 themes in the repository. Again, I always recommend starting in the repository and not searching on Google for, you'll find premium themes. And the note about premium themes, they may have cooler, flashier looks, but they don't have to meet accessibility guidelines. So even if they say they are, if they're not in this repository, they haven't met the WordPress standard. So again, I would always start here. And then this is a great tool because it has a number of quick find filters. So you can search by the latest. So these are the ones that are released most recently. You can find block themes that have been created, as well as you can create your own favorites. So once you're logged in, you can begin saving the ones that you like, and it'll be listed here so you can quickly jump in and install them. What I would always recommend doing is when you come in under the features tab, select accessibility ready. What that means is that it's met a set of standards, and I'll share it in the chat. Oops. Yeah, the WordPress core team developed these guidelines, and again, as a member of the team, they're thinking of revising them right now to continue to make sure that they're as efficient as possible. Oops, that's not going to work. Anyway. Okay. All right, so I'll share this in the chat. So yeah, so make sure you select this, and then once you apply the filters, it'll list all of the themes that are considered accessibility ready. And as you notice, the 2021, 2022, 2023, they're in there because they're built by the core team. So that's always a great place to start for themes. I know during the AIR competition, Sumner, there were a couple that you recommended as well for starting. And I don't have them offhand. I could share those later, unless you know them offhand.
I do not, but we did a lot of work in Generate Press.
Yes.
And we still do a lot of work in Generate Press because they're so responsive when we go, hey, can you fix this? And they do. I personally, I don't keep a list anymore
Okay.
unless I'm working on a project. So I don't have that in mind. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right. So, so again, this is the first step. I would say this is how you get started with accessibility. And this is the reason. So, as you can see, I have 2023 installed. It's here. It tells you a little bit of details about it. I would always enable auto updates. And again, that sort of goes back to what you were saying earlier, Steve, about Jetpack. Like there's one camp on in terms of Jetpack, and there's another. I'm more like you on the easy button thing. I like to make things easy, especially for beginners. You don't want things that'll trip you up. And when you get tripped up, a lot of times you'll stop building your site because you run into a problem. I want to try to keep things simple and easy. So I always start, I always make sure that my themes are updated because again, you don't want your site crashing, and enabling an auto update. Again, that's a controversial topic for people that do a lot of development work, but for beginners, I would always encourage you to do that. All right, so say for instance, let's get out of here and let's go to this post that we have in here. And again, this is a basic, and this is a really simple thing. It's something that WordPress does for you in terms of accessibility. So say for instance, we had, let's drop this in. We had this block. So everyone can still see it, yeah? All right. So, all right. So say for instance, we want to change the background. Over here on the right-hand side, I chose black, which makes everything unreadable. WordPress, if you're using one of these core accessibility ready themes from Automatic, it tells you, hey, this color combination may be hard to read. So it gives you a little flag on the colors that you use. Unfortunately, it doesn't prevent you from doing it, but it does give you, that's at least one, it tells you what, you know, if a color combination works or not. So for instance, this one meets color contrast guidelines. So again, it's a good way on the fly to get a dynamic feedback, especially if you know, like for instance, if your client has design colors, you know, as part of their brand, like if they use PMS, you know, whatever the hex is for PMS 314, for example, you can come in and quickly find whether it matches contrast guidelines or not. So that's, so accessibility ready themes, and inside of the automatic themes, and I'm not sure if the ones that aren't automatic have that same feature, but again, if you use 2022, 2023, et cetera, you'll get this warning when you're playing around with color inside of WordPress.
So Joe, if you don't get the warning, that means the color is good, right?
Yep. Yep. Yes. All right. So that's one color thing. The other thing I would recommend also is that you always check your color contrast here, but there's also a plugin I wanted to share, and it's in the list. There's and this one I found today. Colorzilla is a good one that allows you to pick colors because I have Photoshop. So I always go into Photoshop and I play around there and I could sample the colors. But if you wanted a free tool, there's a couple of Chrome browser extensions like ColorPicker Eye Dropper. Colorzilla has one. And what this allows you to do, and I don't really like this one, it allows you to sample the color. It's sort of intrusive, but let's go ahead and show you how that works. So say, for instance, you wanted to test, and this is a link to, and I'll share it in the, it's already in the slide deck. This is to the meeting, the webinar by Lee. Let's go ahead and test some colors. All right. All right. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go to the color contrast analyzer.
What it's great, Joe, for people that hopefully they're noticing, it gives you the hex color.
Yeah.
So that it makes it real simple to know exactly what color you just landed on.
So, yeah. So you put that in, and then it tells you with white text, it only passes one of the guidelines. And again, but that's, again, you want to make sure you have the right size. And again, down on the color contrast picker page, it tells you what the sizes were. And if you notice on that page, all of the font sizes are above 16. So it does meet one of the minimum guidelines, but I would darken it a little bit just to make sure it works on all levels. So yeah, so this color picker is a great tool. Again, ColorZilla has one. So all of these, I guess once you go to the page for Color Eye Picker, it'll also give you some other ones. So again, arm yourself with that, put it in your browser, and that's simple. So no matter what you're doing, like if you pick a color, you can open it up in your browser and you can check it and you know right away. And then the great thing about the color contrast analyzer is that here it has a slider. So once you pulled in your color, you could say, hey, if I darken it a little, see, just tweaking it a little bit, it pulled it in, and you could pull it all the way in until it passes. All of them or some combination of. Again, I would try to get all four if you can. And again, it tells you the contrast ratio here. All right, so that's simple. You could switch it for foreground, background. You could, enter black. All of the combinations that you have on your website. It's a good way to test those. So again, this is another tool, the contrast checker. There's a number of different color contrast checkers out there in the space, but again, WEBAIM is sort of a leader. They have a great report on the million. They do a survey of 1 million sites each year, and they tell you what are some of the most common errors. And of course, color is one. But so yeah, so they have a lot of great information on this website. So yeah, so those two things are great ways to check color. In terms of accessibility, I would say this is another free tool. They have a Google Chrome browser extension as well for accessibility insights. And that way you can test your page. It'll go through, and let's go here and open up a site, for example. And again, this is more overall. It does not only, it checks for color contrast, but a whole bunch of things. And so this is probably going to be a nightmare. Let's go ahead. And once you install the accessibility insights, it appears in your browser tray. And then you could do a quick fast pass. What that does, it quickly goes through your site and it looks at some of the major areas that you need to improve on. And it gives you a quick report. So see right away, it says, hey, there are 19 different things that are of an issue on your site. And it tells you where it is. If it finds color, it'll tell you some suggested color solutions. And the cool thing about this, and Sumner taught us about this at their very first meetup, is that you can export this report and you could share it with your clients and say, hey, we need to work on these things. You could set up a, hey, you can prioritize and say, hey, we could do this in phase 1, phase 2. But these are simple fixes that you can go in and try to fix right away. So I would say, as you're building, as soon as you install your theme, do a run. See if there's anything wrong with your theme. If you're not using accessibility ready theme, you may find some things that you need to fix right away. Then as you build, just do it step by step and just repeat the process as you go.
Quick side note, Joe, on this. It's a great way for someone to learn accessibility, because not only is this going to give you the alert, something is not okay. And if you're talking color, it will give you the recommendation as to what to do. It'll tell you where in the code the problem is, and it will give recommendations how to fix. And sometimes there's more than one way to fix the issue, so that you can see, oh, this is something, if I just do this and so, I fixed it not only in this case, but every site I work on for my clients. It's a wonderful educational tool.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so again, if you go back to the page, once you run the report, it actually shows you where the issues are with these little exclamation points. And unfortunately, CNN has a lot of problems on their page, but of course they probably don't give a rip until they got, but actually they've been sued about it. So anyway, all right. So again, those are the 3 tools. And again, this is a basic intro, but with those tools, you'll at least get a start and you'll know what to look for. Also, one of the links is the contrast and color accessibility page on WEBAIM. And what's good, it breaks down some of the things we talked about in terms of hue, saturation, and lightness, et cetera, but it also gives you some examples. So again, it says that these all are 4.5.1, but they're not as readable as you think they would be. So again, you have to apply some nuance with this, because it's just not, going by the book is one thing, but you still need to make sure that it's still usable, as usable as possible. And you can make those decisions. It shows you examples of, hey, this is an example of terrible contrast with white text on the background. And it goes through a lot of different examples, like outlining text, like a lot of, text animated features and things like that. That was a widget in Elementor a little while back that got a little bit of play, but again, it goes through some of these examples and why they're not. So this is a great tool for you, again, in terms of color. So again, that's a part of the slide deck as well. It also talks about how you use your logo type in terms of your design and how you can make sure that it's as accessible as possible. So again, this is a great resource. And again, color is one part of the puzzle. And again, this is just a basic intro, but again, starting with that in mind, starting with an accessibility ready theme, making sure that as you build inside of a accessibility ready theme, that you make sure that your colors are on point. You're on your way to making an accessible site. Any questions or comments?
Joe,
Yes.
this is Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
I don't know if it's appropriate here, but if you have like a video, it's not a static image. Do you have any suggestions for that?
In terms of color?
Yeah, to look at it or to have it analyzed to see if the video is accessible.
Well,
A short video, not a movie.
Yeah, I would say you probably need to, if you're working with a designer, to do like your lower third or any graphics, just to make sure that you have color contrast in those slides. I don't know if you're like filming someone. I mean, I guess you could technically see if they could wear colors, but I would say it's more for, you got to make sure you have captions and transcripts. And if you have, still images as part of your video presentation, make sure that those pieces of artwork are accessible in terms of color contrast. But I don't know if live action is impacted in the same way. Sumner, would you agree, or anyone else?
No, I do agree. If you're creating it from slides, then yeah, you want to check the contrast of your slides before you turn it into a video. If you're creating a video, that's part of what's considered media training. I did a accessible video presentation for Access U this year, and that was part that I included was we need to consider what colors are we wearing and how does it contrast with our background, or how does it contrast with whatever else is going on in the video. That's something they teach journalists when they start to get on camera, is they don't want the journalists to blend into the background. They want them to stand out. So how do they do that? By color. They don't wear designs, and they don't wear anything that is going to contrast with what's their surrounding. So it's the same thing. There also is a free tool, I can look it up, that will give you the color analysis of a video, but it won't give you the color contrast, but it'll tell you how many colors are in your video. And if that helps you to decide what changes to make your video, sometimes that's helpful. But for the most part, it starts with pre-planning. Yeah. What is it that you're going to create, and how can you set it up to be a win-win?
Yeah,
that's a good idea. Yeah,
like even, it's notorious, like in the sporting broadcast genre, people always try to wear flashy things, and you see like herringbone patterns and stuff like that that are terrible on the eye. Or yeah, so and then I think what Sumner was saying, making sure you train is important too. Certain, like, you can't really do flashes. I mean, so video is another realm altogether. But if you can control those elements, like was mentioned, like, if you're staging people that you're going to film, you can make sure that they wear certain colors that contrast the background. Again, the artwork, making sure that your titles and credit slides all have the proper amount of contrast. Those are good starting points.
Right. So that way, if you're trying to do a amateur promotional video for the organization, telling people not to wear all black if it's being filmed at night, for example, would be a bad thing. To actually maybe coordinate the colors, like Sumner was just talking about. Oh.
Well, they could wear all black, Lynn, regardless of the time of day. However, that's not easy on perception. If everything is black against If it's black against white, that's harsh. That's hard to actually absorb. But Joe started this presentation about how you want to make a connection through your color. So it's a more, it falls into the realm of what colors would complement each other within the number of people in that frame versus what's going on around them as well. That's supposedly, and it's not always done that way, that's why news people generally wear the same color when they go out in the field. It's consistent with, they've figured out that this color pops best on camera and doesn't blend into the background. They've done a little bit of research. They're not always correct, but they're better than most. And if it's a promotional video, and even when it's a short video, you really want to do your homework to make it your best work.
Yeah, and I know if you were at WordPress Accessibility Day and you saw our video, at the beginning, I did it simple black and white. I didn't do, I could have did a fancy video, but I wanted it to be readable and legible because I knew the audience. And, I tried to build to the audience. So what are you
Thank
gonna,
you.
what are you making, Lynn?
Nothing yet, but I know that several of my chapters, which are people that are visually impaired, all the way from totally blind to people like me that has some vision. We want to encourage or let people know that we exist. And if they needed help with vision issues, not on a medical basis, but in terms of resources and a community, that we're here.
Mhm.
But aside from just, filming, hadn't even thought about what people are wearing, but and that's a really good point in the background. So.
Yeah, and I mentioned at my job at Metro, we have such a mature brand. Like we have in-house photographers, and I learned all that from them too. Like, they try to stage everything so that it is visually what they want to communicate the brand. So especially having someone like you on the, at the beginning of the process to sort of give that kind of input will make better content for your website and your customers.
This is going to be fun.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on the brief intro to color, or any, has it impacted what you kind of do with your sites now versus what you may do in the future? Or
Well, we have a few sites in Thailand, and my partner and I we favored darker backgrounds and lighter text. And of course, in Thailand, we didn't know this until we presented the design to one of the restaurants, but black is associated with death.
Yeah.
So you certainly don't want to have your restaurant with black background. And that's just I just put it in chat saying that's a note where on the culture or ramification of the color.
Yep.
And then I was joking to myself, so I wrote it on there. But the as far as the contrast, if you have people against a green screen, or even like if you do your custom background through Zoom, you'll see like if you have the wrong color shirt on and the custom background is right, you'll like fade out, your arm will go away or something like that.
Yeah, you have a floating head.
Right. And you can go on YouTube and see the bloopers of the newscasters that like blend with the forecast because they're wearing a green dress or something, or it's not dark enough to shade against green. And I mean, that stuff's all like what they were talking about earlier. So I just thought I'd throw it in there for.
Yeah, that's a great point. When I was doing the research, I was going to pull in a couple of the color psychology things that are cultural, because a lot of us do work, not just here in the States, you may do it with people overseas. So, and it goes the same way with content, like certain words, certain phrases you don't use.
Certainly.
Yeah. So yeah. So
And that goes back to how you began, Joe, when you were talking about red. Color red stimulates a passionate reaction. But if somebody has a traumatic brain injury, it can trigger a migraine.
Yeah.
It can trigger a negative response. So if you know that and I found this to be interesting, as through one of the AIR projects, that's the Accessibility Internet Rally for Nobility, one of our clients was an organization that supports people who've had traumatic brain injuries, and they had red all over their site, and they didn't have any understanding as to why people would jump off their site so fast. Mm-hmm. When we did the simple removal of red and put in different colors, their bounce rate went down, their interaction with their website went way up. So it's really know your audience. and don't use one color excessively. I mean, Joe's example of the person that loved magenta. I mean, magenta is a pretty color. However, you know, you don't want to saturate the world with it or saturate your website with it, no matter how much. It's really knowing your audience and what message do you need to convey, and color can do that for you or against you.
And what's powerful about this information is just think of I mean, that's another feather in your cap in terms of raising your rates or justifying what you're charging your clients. Like the ability to know what colors trigger certain effects is something that most designers don't think about. So yeah, it's
every time, Joe, you offer one of these educational meetups, you are assisting everyone who's in attendance in increasing their value, because you're giving them more tools for their toolbox.
Yeah, and at the first WordCamp, WordPress Accessibility Day, your presentation was "Show Me the Money," which talked about that too. Yeah. So again, for everyone in attendance, like you may not think that these things, I mean, these things are all things that we should all do, but most people don't. So that's a niche that will set you apart from other people doing the same kind of work. So I know, Suzette, in terms of, you know, you've just gone through all of your training and you tested out. Can you share anything on, I saw you shared a couple of tools in the chat. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned about color during the training, or anything you can share to the conversation or add to the conversation?
There was another tool. I don't know if it's something you guys have heard of, but it's called getstark.co. I'll put the link in here. But I believe it will simulate different types of color blindness. So you can see like, and it's also an extension for Figma and Sketch as well as your browser, I believe. And it will simulate color blindness, like the different types, like there's green and red and there's blue and yellow color blindness, and one where they can't see color, but it simulates all that. So you can really get a look at what all that looks like.
Yeah, on my work laptop, I had one that was for Mac, and I would pull it up over that Jets Bills image that I would show just to show, and you had the different types of color blindness. So yeah, because 8%, I think the numbers fluctuate, but I think 8% of men have color blindness, which is an incredible.
Yeah, one of my best friends does, and I'm gonna have him test out my things just to see, but he always asks me, is that green or purple? Or is that purple or pink? Because I use a lot of pink, like you were mentioning your friend that does a lot of magenta. That's me. I do that.
Yeah, there's a great, I'm gonna try to find it. There was a great video on YouTube by a colorblind designer. And can you imagine being a designer and being colorblind? So yeah, so I want to try to find that and share it. Any other, Sally, I know you're getting into this. Phil, what did you think about what was presented today?
Hold on just a sec. Come on, where's my thing? I love it because the last 2 years I've just learned so much, and my brain is like all over the place, and I'm trying to compartmentalize by all the different areas of accessibility. And it's like we've gone through some of this, but then you forget it. So like my next steps are to hunker down and like get deep into all of this. Like I can talk top line, but no, it's good. And there's always new resources being added too.
I'm not sure if anyone else here is an IAAP member, but they just announced yesterday a new class that they were offering for members, and it is leveraging user personas in your designs. So that was in design systems actually specifically. So if you have designers that you work with and they work in Figma and Sketch, it seems I work with a group of designers and they seem to be changing their tools all the time from Adobe XD to Sketch to Figma. So all of those I know, but I know that that tool that I mentioned, Stark, does have a plugin for all the different graphic programs, I believe.
Oh, awesome. So
you can use that.
Great. All right. I'm gonna, before we wrap up, I was gonna, and again, that's sort of what I wanted to talk about today. So any other thoughts or comments on what we talked about today in terms of color? And again, you can see there's a couple of easy, quick ways that you can definitely make an impact on the colors that you use on your site. And it's good to hear that so many people are already doing it.
Just save the chat. And if you don't know
Yeah.
how to do that, go down there by the little emoji smiley face down there where you type in your message, hit the 3 dots to the next of it, and it'll say save the chat. And then when you save the chat, it'll actually say show in Finder or show in browser, whatever. You can find the location, but it'll be in a Zoom subdirectory for this date, and even maybe have the title of the Zoom presentation on it. And you should do that in every Zoom meeting that you come to, because I found that, I mean, I go to a lot of these, and probably like 5 a week or 6 a week, and there's so much going on. And I put up there in the chat about Eagle's website, WordPress, buddy, and it's I'm trying to find where I put it in there, but it's WP Help Desk support. That's made by Eagle, and he takes all the chats, and he kind of has over the years, and he's put it together in a really pretty informative website with a bunch of links and stuff on it. And we do mention accessibility on it. So we talk about some a lot in meetups. You guys don't know how popular you are. So we thank you very much for all this effort too. And Joe, you've always been one of my well, since I went to the first WordPress meetup, WordCamp in Riverside, and you talked, and I found out you're from my hometown. You've been my motivation to do all this, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. And that's nice. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but thanks. I mean, I just try to, like, I love to share the message. Like when I hear, and I at the top I mentioned when I heard Sumner's message about accessibility, it was in the back of my mind, and at work they sort of ignored it, but it brought it to the forefront in a way that it sort of made me act on it. So and again, I just want to try to share this kind of stuff, because it's, as you can see, it's, a lot of people will say, hey, oh, accessibility is too hard. I mean, there's so many little things that you could do along the way. And just think, as you learn stuff, you always add stuff to your toolkit anyway. So just adding a couple of steps to check your color, or check, to run your site and make sure that it's accessible. These are easy things that you could, get started with. So glad to hear that. And, that's why I'm always wearing something from Michigan. All right.
Well, you never know, and since Steve kind of touched on it, you never know who's actually hearing your message. You never know the ripple effect from what information you shared and how far it's going to continue. So, it may seem like, gee, nobody's listening to me, nobody's doing anything, nobody's, I'm kind of like speaking in the wind. And then suddenly you get feedback somewhere that says, nah, we were listening, we heard you.
That's so true, and that's so not the truth. I'm telling you, your meetups this year have been missed, and people mention you and Joe as being experts in this field. And when people start talking about accessibility, and even like this meeting was talked about this week, about the color thing, and we know this. So like if anybody starts talking about accessibility, the first thing they say is, oh, there's this lady out of LA, Sumner Davenport, you got to find her meetups, and she's the one. So I'm telling you, whether you feel it's falling on deaf ears, if there's only like this 7 or 6 people that show up, and I know Joe, like Saturday meetups is your thing. It's hard for me to make Saturday meetups, as you know, I have a little boy, and he's behind me right now, so sometimes it's difficult, but we seriously, like, we talk about you guys at least 3 or 4 times. So you figure that's 20 meetups. So, like 20% of the time in a meetup, your name will come up. If it's just like, you should check out Joe or Sumner for that information. It's like that. And we talk about you guys all the time. So really keep on doing the thing. You're making changes. People are listening. I'm not nearly as qualified to talk about this, even as Sally said, even top line stuff, but I do pay attention to my color contrast just for that reason, because of you guys. I do take seriously when Google sends me an alert, say your font size is too small. And I do look at it, and I do make the changes. And just the other day, after I made some changes to a font on a page, I said, oh, and I'm still not happy with it. So I got to mess around with it to get it till, you know, if I can't read it, obviously, like with these little specs on, I see pretty good. And I can't make it out as clear as I'd like it to be, then I make some changes to it. And it's all because y'all. So I appreciate it. And I'm thinking everybody does. Just because you don't get that many in a stuff.
Oops. Uh-oh.
There's this going on, or that you haven't made impact on other hosts. Like there's a lot of, you know, we have a lot of Southern California online meetings. I mean, West Coast online meetings. And if you look from Denver over, from Dallas over with Eric, and then I forget her name in Denver for the Elementor group. You know, we go all the way over there, all the way up California into Portland and Washington. We talk about you guys. So really, like, keep on doing it.
Oh, thanks.
And so, and I just want to say too, Sumner, I haven't had a chance to respond, but your LinkedIn comment to Joe's, your thank you on LinkedIn, when you said like initially people weren't listening to you or whatnot, like I was floored. I just thought like, you know, everyone, because you've been doing this much longer than all of us. And when I read that, I was like, wow, okay. And you didn't give up. You kept on going, and look at, you know, the difference that you've made. And that just makes me feel good, because if people don't want to listen, someone has said, well, move on to others, because there's more that will want to listen and be open to it.
And enough people are listening and they're talking about it. Like, I swear to you, please keep doing this. Like, I mean, I might not come to all of them. You know, I might be the in and out Santa Clarita guy from San Bernardino, you're doing our group kind of thing. But I'm telling you, please believe me that you two have huge impact. Everybody knows your names. I mean, everybody, at least the people I interact with. And that's like 100, 150 people. I mean, we only had 600 people come to WordCamp. And like, so now I have like a third of the group that I interact with on a monthly basis, you know, and I'm telling you, like, we see each other in these meetups, these online meetups, and your names come up. So like, you make an impact. And at least among the hosts, and of course the hosts, we get people that ask us outside of the meetups for help, and you know, we help them, and your name gets mentioned. So you're doing great.
All
Like,
right.
really, don't feel bad about it, and don't say anything. Feel proud about it, and be happy with it, and use it as ammunition to keep on rolling, because you're kicking ass.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Well, thank you. I meant that comment for everybody in the group to keep sharing and keep doing, because you don't know how far your message and your voice is reaching either.
Yeah, for
As
me,
a group, we can impact so much more.
yeah, for me, it's so awesome. Like, when to hear the question, like Lynn's question made me feel good, because she's actually thinking about these things before she starts a project. Or, I mean, that's all it takes, is to have somebody. And I think I mentioned that during WordPress Accessibility Day, just having somebody in the room. Like, if you're meeting with your client, you're that person in the room to get the message across. And yeah, so the last thing I was going to do, and it's sort of outside the scope of the meetup. And Larry, Larry or Don, did you have any ideas on what you saw today, or any comments before we?
Normally I can't make the Saturdays because I'm volunteering at the VA with the visually impaired veterans. So, you know, I get that part of the world I get to experience because I'm with them all the time. I'm a volunteer driver, and we take them out for events and stuff like that. So
What day would work better? I mean, I could alternate, or
it's, you know, get the other meetups too, but
because I know everyone else does Thursdays, or
yeah, and I really enjoy coming to the meetings. I wish I had some place where I could apply this stuff other than my own personal websites, but like I say, it's a learning deal. And Joe and I have kind of a small connection. He works for Metro. I was raised in a railroading family, and I spent 14 years at a rail museum in Paris operating the equipment from the 50s
took my
and
kids there a few
60s.
times.
Yeah, and you know, he told me he was with the Metro, and I go, oh wow, we could talk trains, but anyway. But yeah, you know, like I said, your names, and you know, they're out there, and you're important. if people don't want to listen, there's not much you can do to them. You can't hit them with a hammer. But you know, just keep getting the word out and helping people. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
And Joe, your sessions, I love when people record them, because if we can't make it Saturdays, we can go back and watch them.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll put this one up
And just
tomorrow.
like you can save the chat, you can also save the transcripts.
Yeah.
So you might want to open up the live transcript and hit the save transcript button as well, because then there'll be like a really complete, you know, review of these sessions. I get a lot out of these sessions. I got a lot out of today. Lynn and I are always talking about, you know, doing it first, you know, baking the accessibility in from the ground up, because, you know, why go back and redo it? So information like today is so important, you know, to that, you know, it's like, you know, why play around with the colors and then have to go back and change all of your colors? You know, you make sure they're going to work. You have them as close to what you want them to be in your artistic mind, but then you kind of work with them and make sure that the contrast will be good for everybody. You bake that in the very beginning. You don't have to go back and fix it. So we're always talking about this. You know, we get so much out of these sessions, you know, it comes up in conversation just in the middle of the day. You know, we'll be eating lunch and we'll just start talking about accessibility stuff and like, yeah, we got to do that. And Lynn's working at it already with her volunteer job. So, you know, she's kind of, you know, in a position to really work with this stuff. So that's great. We get a lot out of this. And also just to, you know, Steve in the beginning, he was talking about his help desk thing. One thing that we also recognize is that you can come into these WordPress groups as a total beginner, you know, just the most basic knowledge of this, and you don't have to feel, you know, less than when you ask your questions. You know, everybody is willing to jump on it and help. It's not like, oh, you don't know that. You know, you never get any of that kind of vibe from anybody. You know, everybody is always helpful. Nobody ever makes you feel like, you know, you're not good enough because you don't know enough yet. You know, you just don't have the knowledge yet. So once you have that knowledge, and as long as you're comfortable, you know, getting the information, asking for it, you know, it all works. And, you know, I always feel very comfortable in these sessions. Lynn does as well. Some people know a whole lot of stuff, and we just know that everybody who knows all that stuff is like more than willing to jump in and share. I mean, I'm in music and I teach guitar and stuff, and like, you know, it's like when someone's kind of like, oh, how do these chords work? I'm always like, oh, you know what? You can play these different inversions and listen to how, like, you know, like an A chord to a D chord sounds like this all the time when you play it, but listen to what it sounds like when you play it this way or that way, and it's still an A chord and a D chord, but you kind of change the inversions and get a different sound. And, you know, it's like, you know, being helpful, you know, being, you know, making people feel like, you know, they're getting someplace, and we get that from all of these sessions. So, you know, thank you for that.
Awesome. I mean, that's what this community is about. I mean, everyone, you know, any of the meetups that you go to, but whether it be Steve or Sumner, everybody wants to learn and help others. So, and Anna, thanks again. What were your thoughts? Just looking in on what we talked about today. I know that's probably a odd question to ask, but that's something.
I love your presentations always. I love the meetups. You know, for me, it's great. I mean, I don't really do, you know, a lot of stuff in WordPress besides the blog, but I'm always learning something new. So from everybody. So thank you.
And are you involved with the webinar that's coming up for people that may not have attended one before? What should they expect?
Oh yeah, like the webinars are really under one of my responsibilities. So I put it together. I find the speaker. I get it all coordinated, and then I'm in the webinars myself, introducing the speaker, moderating, and doing the Q&A. So yes.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, which webinar is this?
It's for green. I'll share it in the chat.
Yeah, we have monthly webinars on everything, really, everything WordPress related. Or
I did one on accessibility before. That's in there.
and we'll do one. We have to do one again.
Yep. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
working.
yeah, because I host with you guys because of this
Oh, awesome.
meetup. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the last
Me-
thing, and again, thanks to everyone for sharing all the kind words. Again, that gives me the fuel. You know, I had a heart of it. This is how I've healed myself, is sort of interacting with the community and trying to give back. So this is always nice to know that you guys feel that energy too. So the last thing I was going to do, for those that didn't see the Accessibility Day presentation, I was going to play the intro. It's about 18 minutes if everybody wants to check it out.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, I'm going to play it. Hold on, let me share my screen one more time.
Hey, and Joe,
Yes.
I would prefer, I saw that, so I haven't responded to Sumner's post about this on LinkedIn, and I saw that you liked it, but I want it, but you should do it, actually post the link to this for people to see that didn't see it.
Okay.
Sumner, will that embarrass or you or upset you or anything?
But I was going to say this one, it doesn't have our panel part of it. So this is just the intro.
Right.
So you want me to do this one as well as the other? Like I also put in the slide link, the link to the actual full video that's on the WordPress Day channel, if you wanted to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, so you want
so there-
both links or just, yeah. So this one is not going to include this was, I had to do this before and send it. So yeah. So either way, I'll put them both up if that works too. All right. So let me share my screen. All right, so can you see the screen? Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna fire it up.
Also,
Okay, let me start it over.
And Joe, thank you for all your hard work on this. Like, very much appreciate it.
No problem.
For those of us in the WordPress community is family. An environment for others to learn and grow.
Sorry, Joe, we're only seeing your
We
desktop with
celebrate
thumbnails.
Oops.
achievements.
Oops. Sorry.
That's okay.
Let me stop the share and start it over again. Wait.
We're not seeing the video. We're not seeing the actual video. We're just seeing your note page and your little Google Drive page.
And while he's doing that, I want to say, someone said to me that we're all using assistive technology, our glasses. I never thought of that.
Okay, so now can you see the title on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start it over one more time.
What is community? For those of us in the WordPress community is family. An environment for others to learn and grow. A place where we celebrate everyone's achievements.
One other note is I also did research on accessible type. So I used a type that they recommended being more accessible or legible. So just another FYI.
I'm going to change the presentation's title from Growing WordPress Accessibility in Our Community to what it should be. Her story, Growing WordPress Accessibility in Your Community.
That's how I learn. That's how I learn about you. That's how I connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
So video calls and these meetups were a much more effective way for me to feel a part of the community. So Sumner helped me and gave me that when I was just ramping up, trying to figure out my career, which is now I am an accessibility marketing consultant and speaker. Yes. It was one of the kind of propelled me. You know, it was the perfect storm of multiple things, and she was one of those things because I love how she thinks about accessibility as a whole and not just specific posts. And that's what I try to do. I don't just focus on caption and making sure with deaf and hard of hearing people can access things. I want everybody to have access, just like Sumner. We share that in common. And what I love about her is she shares her stories. And those one stories that I share a lot, and I always credit her because it's such a powerful story. You know, so many times clients say, I don't know, I don't have disabled people in my audience. I don't need to worry about disability, accessibility, right? So she tells a story about how a client, she was working with him on colors for the website, and he picked colors that were not very accessible. She said, well, why don't we take it around the office and get everybody's thoughts on them?
Oh, that was a great story.
Yeah, you remember that story? And then she take it to the guy, the client partner's office. And the partner said, go back and show me, I'm colorblind. And that just blows my mind because the guy didn't even know his partner was colorblind. And it communicates the importance of accessibility, the importance of people you know may have disabilities and you just don't know it. There's so many disabilities that are not apparent. So, yeah, you are most likely going to have people with disabilities in your audience and maybe working right next door with you. Great one, text. Okay, so I never made videos for many years. I am a marketer by career, and I knew the importance of video. And I didn't make videos for years because now I was born deaf, so I have an accent that comes with it. And I just didn't know how people would receive my accent because I understand if some people struggle with it, or if it doesn't sound good, you know. So I'm realistic, I understand. But when I started making videos, I got great reception. People were wonderful about it. And then that Access You event was my second event at Access You. The first one was the year before, but it was a small one. So it was my first full class that I taught. And so the fact that Sumner invited me because of that made me feel so good because it showed she liked my speaking. She saw value in what I had to offer. And that was the start of my speaking career, pretty much. It snowballed. But her inviting me was just the first step. And then pretty soon I was getting more invitations. And now this year I've done a TEDx talk. And I don't think that would have happened without those little nuggets along the way, like Summer inviting me to her group.
I love the colorblind story. It goes with what we're talking about today about color.
Yeah, I'm Paul. I'm a graduate student doing research, and my research actually focused on accessibility. Doing computer research, basically. My major is computer science, so, and my concentration is software engineering. So we're basically trying to do research on how to build tools to automatically detect accessibility issues in web applications. Okay. So, and I met Summer last year during the AIR competition. So I joined AIR last minute and I was in 9:13. And then we were a team of 4, kind of short-handed, but we had Summer as a mentor. So she's really powerful. Yeah, so she was our mentor for the team. One thing that I remember the most is like we didn't we were trying to make sure screen readers would work on our site. And then Sumner, that thing that struck, stuck in my head the most is like Sumner mentioned how NVDA and JAWS perform differently depending on the environment, user environment. And I was like, wow, that kind of subtlety, you wouldn't know unless you've been doing it for a while. Not only like the high level stuff, she's like good with the low level implementation as well. Like I remember one time we were implementing this navigation bar on the top of the website, and there's a search button, there's a search box, and then we were trying to determine how to label it. And then she just pulled out the exact W3C. Like, here's an example of how you can do it. Like, yeah, there's no limit, like you said.
Hi, I'm Jennifer and I have long black hair. I want to believe I have mischievous eyes. I'm wearing a red t-shirt with a purple pullover and my background is blurred. How did I meet Sumner? Definitely the very first WordCamp Santa Clarita Valley organized by you, Joe. I was so new to making websites, still relatively new, and to the WordPress community. WordCamp, that was my very first WordCamp. I had met you like 2 weeks before and you invited me and I was like there going, what is this? This is awesome. And I had not heard about web accessibility at all. I was so dang new. And I really loved in attending that. I know that, you know, as a woman of color, as somebody with neurodivergence who experiences and organizes information differently than a lot of people, that like I know the feeling of being excluded or not being designed for, with needing to doubt myself to be able to participate. And so that really affected me and just wanted me to learn how to learn more about how this type of inclusion. And I loved the way Sumner presented. She broke things down, made things really easy to understand. And also, you know, at some of her presentations, they were components where we could bring what she was sharing, we could test our own websites and enact fixes to them that made learning about accessibility really empowering. I think for about a year after that WordCamp, whenever Sumner was speaking at a WordPress meetup, like in the LA area, I would get in the car and drive. And I remember there was a WordPress out of Santa Clarita Valley, and a bunch of us were pretty fired up about what we learned. And somehow, like, and I think Ron Amick was definitely there, and it was another woman. And like by the time like Joe and Sumner were walking back to their cars, and somehow we got Sumner to agree to run a meetup with us about WordPress and accessibility. I think we were the first ones at 2019, or at least the first ones that I know about. In 2020, we had our first meetup in Los Angeles area at a Panera Bread, and you know, there was definitely interest, and then COVID forced us all to go online. And so then we ended up having a worldwide community of WordPress plus accessibility learners, and, you know, from all levels, like super beginners like me to people who have been developing for a while, like Alicia St. Rose, and of course, Ron Amick. And yeah, and it was, Sumner like brought in such incredible speakers and educators, like talking about, you know, we would address one topic and then learn from their perspective, and also have components where we actually brought that work learning into our own website. Able to see like this flourishing, how many people that Sumner has inspired and mentored. And I feel really lucky to be in community in this way. So thank you, Sumner, for your tireless education and advocacy. We feel really blessed to have you in our community.
Who's this chance? I was mentioning to one of my girlfriends who has a digital marketing agency as well about accessibility, and she said she was going to start selling it. I'm like, oh, well, how are you going to do that? Because I knew she didn't really know much, right? And well, she was going to sell an overlay. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I'm still too new. So I went back to Sumner, and she, you know, armed me with all the positive ammunition that I needed to educate my friend Karen on the real way to sell accessibility and not with shortcuts. And Karen trusted me, believed in me, canceled her account. And when I had posted that in our Slack group, Sumner said to me that you truly are a real accessibility champion. And that was just like, oh, I just like, it just touched me.
in that chaos, and in the churn that has been happening, there's Sumner as the calm, that holds up the roof, the calm in the storm, the reasonable voice, and she's consistent, and she never lets down her fire. She's always got the fire burning for making accessibility happen. She has to control herself sometimes because she gets a little too emotional in some cases, and like with regard to overlays and overlay companies in particular. And but she's just, she is an amazing influence over so many, a huge range of developers, designers, users of WordPress and beyond WordPress. My professional work with her has been as a co-developer of an accessibility meetup, which began as a WordPress San Fernando Valley meetup in 2020 at the dawn of the COVID problems. We only had one in-person meetup, and it was a great series that was all Sumner. Sumner, thought, oh, let's find someone who's blind, because everyone thinks that's the first thing people think of as blind people. And we got the amazing Anthony Vasquez, and he came in. From there, we went on to every other major area of accessibility. And she's just, and I was along in the front row seat to learn from her.
It went online, obviously, like all the other ones during COVID, and I believe it might have been maybe the third meetup. It felt like it was in March or April that I had the meetup, and one woman showed up, and I believe she was the only person that showed up that night because I was just getting it rolling. And this beautiful redhead shows up, and she's like, I know she means business because the way she's answering and talking, she's really, really like serious and passionate about this accessibility thing. And I had been exposed to accessibility, and in my viewpoint, it was only for people who were blind. Like that, I think most people have that misconception that it's for people who can't see the web, but there's so much more to it. But that night, I was just, that was my basic stuff was, make sure people can read what's on the website, like your text and everything. And she started talking about what are called overlays, which I never actually heard that term used before. And when she kept describing and talking about this, I realized that I had secretly, unbeknownst to my client, put one on his website, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like, oh my God, this thing slides out. People can do whatever they want. And as she's talking about it, saying that, when that thing slides out in a lot of cases, not all 100%, but a lot of cases, in most cases, it actually gets in the way, and it flags down people to like maybe look more at your website to see if it's really accessible without that thing. Okay, because really it should be without it. So while she's talking about this, I kind of sneaked away. Like literally logged into my client's site. I was like, deactivate that thing. Okay, and that was the first and last overlay I ever put on a website. And I'm so thankful that Sumner was there to point you in that direction. And in the midst of that, I started realizing there was really more to this than putting some plugin on. Also more to, you can't see the website. And so I'm the kind of person that if I know that there is now an area that is important and it actually will make other people's lives better, Sumner Davenport, you
are probably one of the most influential people I've ever come across in this WordPress community. You have literally pivoted the way that I work and develop websites. And it's not about the coding or the geeky part. It's about having my heart opened to people who have diff abilities. That's the word I want to use, because there's not a disadvantage to people with abilities that are different. And I just wanted to make sure that everything that I can provide on the web is open to anyone's ability, no matter where they are on the spectrum. And I want to thank you so wholeheartedly for that night when a light bulb went on, and it has only gotten brighter and it will never dim. And I want to thank you so much. And I love you, and you are a dear friend of mine now.
Wow, Sumner is so incredible. And now you can see why she's meant so much to our community in terms of accessibility. Here's some other things that we were working on in the past 5 years as community. We had 2 teams participate in the Nobility Air competition, where we built client sites for nonprofits. The incredible thing about that competition was that we had to work on the WCAG guidelines and apply them to specific areas of our website, which is pretty awesome. We, as mentioned at the top, we celebrate everything that our community does. We're all connected on social media, and whenever something happens, whenever we speak or get a new job or get some training, we share it with each other and we congratulate each other. We also, in the lead up to WordPress Accessibility Day 2 years ago, we did a mega meetup where we had speakers in and sort of simulated what people would get on WordPress Accessibility Day. We were one of the first and only WordCamps to have not 1, 2, or 3 speakers, as most camps do, but we had 16 speakers in a dedicated track on both days at WordCamp Santa Clarita, which was a first. Go to a meetup. You can go to the IAAP page and the events tab and find a number of different meetups focusing on accessibility, not just WordPress accessibility, but general accessibility topics all across the country. Here are also some resources on how to contribute to WordPress accessibility on the Make WordPress channel. Just click on the accessibility box and you'll find out about when the next meeting is, the next bug scrub, and how to get involved. And now, time for our panel. Alicia St. Rose, Ron Amick, Sally Thune, and Sumner Davenport.
So that was it. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. So, yeah, for those that couldn't make it, that was sort of what we did in the lead up to the meetup. What was awesome was it was a surprise for Sumner. Like, I don't think she heard the interviews, which was kind of nice. And to me, when I've watched it quite a few times, because I sort of edited together, like each person sort of got emotional during, their recollection of when they met her and, some stories that they shared about interacting with her, which was to me, so this was sort of like, it was very emotional, but it was awesome to sort of share her with the global WordPress community.
It's still emotional watching it again, how she's touched so many lives. And I had the honor to sub-mentor with Sumner on Air Rally last year, and the team called her Allie Einstein affectionately. And
I know
just
Paul
love that
mentioned
term.
that. Yeah. You mentioned it too. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Watching that, it makes me think we should do another brief one on captions maybe next time. But we do have one coming up on Black Friday stuff. And again, I think I've mentioned it to the community before. This is sort of the best time if you're thinking of trying to plug in, if you're thinking of trying a hosting company, like purchasing it during Black Friday, you'll get a lot of times you'll get a deep discount. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then what I want to do after that is sort of start building in 6.1 and learning about blocks like the way I probably should know. But anyway, any other comments before we close it down today? I've taken up 2 hours of your Saturday, and I apologize.
Thank you. Thank you,
thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
All right, awesome. Thanks, folks. Have a good
Great
Saturday.
meeting as always.
Thanks, Sumner. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Sally. See you later.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you all for sharing.